This is the I Hate Football podcast. What is going on, everybody? I am your host, Q, and tonight we continue on with our State of the Cane series. This is part 3, and tonight we're going to focus in on the defense, right? This is a unit that, by all accounts, by all metrics, by all numbers, by anything you can measure, this was the best unit on the team last year. There's no real, there's no real argument to be made as to anything else, right? And so, we thought it was only right we break it down, and in order to do that, I'm joined tonight by somebody you guys know very well, and it is my boy Will from the 305 Sports Now podcast. What is going on, my guy?
Q, man, hey, I gotta say something, man. I love the thumbnail you used for today's episode, man. I love that use of AI, man. Doesn't it nice? Don't they come out nice, bro?
It's so much easier. It's so much easier.
It is, right?
I was like, God, why don't I do this more often? Like,
yeah, man.
I do this more often.
Welcome to my world, bro. Welcome to my world.
Bro, I need to definitely master that side of it. I need to work on everything, but especially the technology, the AI side of things. I really need to get better on that side of things, man. So, it's on the off-season to-do list, right? To get better at everything, but definitely get better at the visual, at the presentation, side of things. So, we'll see. We'll keep working on that in the off-season, man. So
awesome.
We'll see.
Glad to help too, bro. I'm glad to help.
Absolutely, bro. Absolutely. I know you know that side of things for sure, man. But yeah, man, wanted to bring you on, man. Like I said in the intro, man, to break down, the defense, man, and by all accounts, by every metric, every number, if you had eyes, right, you saw that there was really no disputing that this was the kind of the strongest point of the team, right? If you're looking at what 24 was, in terms of just a flat out liability, right? You look at 25, right? You fast forward to to this past season, and really it was the identity of the team, right? On every level, they got better. At every position group, they were just they produced more. They just made a bigger impact. And I think it began with the hire of new defensive coordinator Corey Heatherman, right? I think I was one of those guys, man, that after the 24 season, I was stuck, right? Because I was like, man, Lance Guidry was supposed to be like this guy, right? I mean, he was supposed to come in, right? An older guy, a guy that came from Marshall. In the year before, if you looked at his defense, all the numbers and I mean, they were top 5 literally in every major category across college football, right? You look at everything, right? Passing efficiency, rushing defense, third down, tackles for loss, so on and so forth, right? So it was like you figured, hey, with what seemingly was more talent, you figured out, very quickly it wasn't. But you figure, okay, he's going to come to Miami, he's going to have more defense to, he's going to have better players on defense to work with. Naturally, this is going to translate, right? And it was anything but, right, in 24. And so, you fast forward to 25 with Corey Heatherman, and what a difference it was, man. I mean, what do you think about Corey Heatherman and the way that the impact that he made with the Canes?
Well, it was a great impact because Guidry's second year, let's face it, was just flat out atrocious. It was a lot of regression. A lot of the schematics wasn't working, and there wasn't any real adjustments to it as well. A lot of, the scheme itself alone, even in the Syracuse game, you left, Damari Brown on an island. I know Jay Federico on an island when they were getting killed by those receivers, and you did nothing but have a safety over. You blitzed when you shouldn't have blitzed as well. You ran too many stunts versus just attacking the whole way. I did see, looking back a little bit, obviously now I'm being an armchair quarterback here, but I did see, even Guidry's first year, there were some cracks to his defense. If you recall, we gave up a lot of points against North Carolina. The Louisville game was a shootout, and we lost that shootout against Louisville, right, as well. And even the bowl game, I know a lot of guys opted out to go to get ready for the NFL, but we looked really bad against Rutgers in that bowl game. In comes, Corey Heatherman, a great reputation. I saw what he did in Minnesota. I looked at the film. I saw everybody setting edges, which is something that this team lacked the year before. They just couldn't set an edge. If you were able to get the outside angle on this football team, get ready for a 40-yard gain. I saw people setting edges, so I was excited about the defense. But man, we'll talk about achieving, the ladder and going over that ladder as well and hitting that rooftop. I mean, our defense was sick. Not one game that I could point to where we were totally flat. Yeah, there were some there was some drives here and there, like the first drive against Louisville where they threw the kitchen sink at us, and there's some drives here and there. Yeah, not everything is perfect, but for the most part, the defense was extremely consistent. The entire season, the defense kept us in games. The defense won us games. The defense was made the biggest impact in the playoffs as well. Ruben Bain, looked great. He didn't have all those sack numbers in the regular season. He obviously picked it up in the playoffs where it really mattered most. But Ahmad Guy Mesler got to eat because of it. The interior lineman got to eat because of it as well. We saw much improvement from the linebacker position. We saw great work from our defensive backs, especially when they were aggressive as well. We saw young, true freshmen like Bryce Fitzgerald really elevate this team when they were on the field. They weren't like, a weakness. They were actually seemed like a strength, right, as well. Just the fact that when Heatherman came in here and the revamping and the day and night that it was from 2024 to 2025 was unbelievable. And Q, I am here for it in 2026 because I think our defense is going to be just as good as it was last year 2 of their Heatherman scheme and system.
Yeah. I mean, again, man, you hit those things on the head, like we talked about. I think, 2 years under Guidry, right? I mean, I think a lot of times, you think that first season, okay, it's kind of a transition year, and I've always said, man, I think at times we underestimate when there is a coordinator change, right? And I think a lot of times we kind of take for granted, it's like, oh, no big deal, right? No big deal whatsoever, right? We'll elevate somebody that's on the staff already, or people think, okay, that'll be seamless, right? Or we're going to bring somebody in. The defense. There's so many cliches that come with that. Oh, it's going to be, it's going to be difficult for the opposing offense, but it's going to be simple for us. Or it's going to be, and you kind of miss out on a lot of the important things where it's like, listen, these are the players I draft, or these are players that I recruited. These are players whose tendencies I know. I know what they're good at, what they're not, so on and so forth. And I think that's missed and it's underestimated when you make a coordinator change. And I think it tends to be a quicker change, like we saw this year. It tends to be a quicker change with the defense, right? Usually, a defensive coordinator can come in and change things, again, generally speaking, a little quicker than the offense can. Offense, based more on timing, based more on kind of gelling, where the defense can kind of come in and really on the fly. Listen, Manny Diaz did it when he became the defensive coordinator, right? I mean, it was literally a night and day difference when he became, coordinator under Mark Richt. I mean, you saw the same thing this year, with Corey Heatherman, coming in his first year, right? And so, you look at it was literally night and day, right? Yeah. Literally, I mean, just from the word go, right? They from game one, right? They started, against Notre Dame, holding those great running backs, right? Jeremiah Love, 33 yards rushing. And it just, it never stopped. It just kind of went on from there, right? And you look at some of these numbers, right? And some of the stuff that he affected. And just, incredible. Absolutely incredible. I don't even want to touch on the 24 numbers. It made me want to vomit. But you look at Miami's defense, and I hate it. Like, I hate even thinking back on that. It makes me so angry. It makes me so angry. Scoring defense, 5th, right? 14.8 points per game, right? Total defense, 11th, 292.6 yards per game. Rushing defense, 6th. There were 87 or so yards a game. Sacks, per game, 3.13, 4th. Third down defense, 11th, right, with a 30.8 conversion rate. Literally everything that Miami couldn't do in 24. They couldn't get off the field. They literally could not get off the field in 24, right? And so when you're looking at all the things, at the ways in which a defense like this affects the game, it cannot be undervalued. It can't be undersold. The impact that he made, the fact he won the Broyles Award was a little bit surprising to me, given that it was given to, I think Brian Haynes, the guy from Indiana. Yeah. He had already been there. I'd already had a good defense, which, again, obviously I'm biased, given my fandom. But dude, when you look at everything and the impact this guy made, that's why I go back to, and we've talked about it. I know a lot of people are freaking out about Zach Etheridge, right? We lost Zach Etheridge to the Arizona Cardinals, right? So on and so forth. But to me, yes, I'm not saying that doesn't matter. But to me, what matters more so than anything is having that continuity with Corey Heatherman, and obviously by the same token on offense, which again we've seen how that could be a little bit a little bit shaky. New offensive coordinator, right? That you never know what to expect there, but the fact that both of those guys are coming back, and again, obviously today being the focus, the defense being the focus. Listen, I have no doubt that I think they're going to get the right guy to replace Zach Etheridge, right? And when you look at what Mario has done, he's gone. I've heard a lot of names, and you're hearing these like big schools and everything, with possible, replace for Zach Etheridge. But listen, like the coaches he's brought in, by and large, are not from huge programs, right? Zach Etheridge himself came from Houston, right? When you look at Matt Merritt, like two guys that now have departed for the NFL, and Matt Merritt and Zach Etheridge, and those were two questionable hires when they were made. Right, because those guys, Matt Merritt, if you recall, came from USF, right? Zach Etheridge came from Houston, right? Not big names, right? But guys that he brought in immediately, made an impact in their respective, position rooms, on the recruiting trail, and now you've seen the way they've developed and everything. So, again, I sleep well at night knowing Corey Heatherman is still there. I think the scheme is intact, and I think whoever they bring in, I'm gonna have confidence in that they're gonna come in, be able to work with Will Harris, the other DB's coach, and just kind of fit right in and continue on with what it is that Zach Etheridge accomplished while he was here.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I think Mario's gonna make a really good hire as well. I've heard names like Terry Jefferson, who's already on the staff. I mean, him getting a promotion. He actually worked with the Nichols last year, and Keontae Scott, and even Jacoby Thomas as well. And we saw how they turned out. So I wouldn't be surprised if they promote from within. Another thing too I've heard is obviously, but I heard that conversation isn't really happening. But Mario likes to keep everything very, very tight-lipped. And is Pat Surtain, who recently let go by Florida State. Obviously, if you're a Dolphin fan, you know who Pat Surtain is, and his son was highly recruited out of American Heritage. So I think that honestly we could talk about it, but it's always been a surprise hire. We've never. I mean, I remember last year I was throwing the name Jim Leonard out there for Corey before Corey Heatherman was hired. Other people were saying Will Muschamp. I even threw T-Rob as a potential wild card to have been here and a South Florida guy. Corey Heatherman was mentioned like as a whisper, by some of the more local podcasters, more locked in with the program. And lo and behold, that was a slam dunk hire. I think the best hire of any assistant coach this past season. So we'll see. I'm actually more concerned. We'll address it another day, but I'm actually more concerned about special teams, to be honest with you, than I am who we bring in, in the defensive backfield. So, but I'm very confident that, and even the running back room as well. So I'm very confident we'll make the right hire. So that's pretty much it. But we'll see what happens. Again, I trust the staff, and I trust Mario's recognition of coaching talent.
Yeah, dude. I mean, again, look, Heatherman's system is intact, right? And like we talked about, man, some of these numbers. Right. Again, man, when you look at the yards allowed, right, that we didn't touch on previously, dude, they went from 415 yards to 315 yards.
Yeah.
Right. Dude, 100-yard difference. 100-yard difference, bro. That literally, I mean, dude, that's not incremental. Right. That's literally, right. A shift in philosophy, right? A shift in mindset. And it's what you can't underestimate when you talk about keeping a guy like Corey Heatherman, right? So that's why, to me, man, you continue to go down the numbers. Right? We talked about, third down defense, right? Bro, that's identity right there. Pure and simple. That's identity. You're going from a 42%, right? They dropped 11%, right? So it was 30.8, right at 31%. Right. So I mean, dude, you get off the field, that you're dictating tempo right there. You're 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out there, and you're dictating tempo right there. You're getting the ball back to your offense, right? Continue to go down the line. We went from total sacks, we went from 28 to 44. 28 to 44. And when you get pressure on that quarterback, we all know what happens. Everybody else looks better. Everybody else looks better. You added 16 sacks, and obviously a lot of that, aside from scheme, is having a healthy Mesidor and a healthy Ruben Bain, because we know in 2024, I don't know how much info has been put out there. I don't know if you can recall that, but I think, and now there was some games missed, right? I mean, but those guys weren't healthy in 24. By and large, they weren't healthy in 24. You had Mesidor playing out of position. You had Bain that wasn't at full strength, so on and so forth. So, again, I think there were reasons behind that, right? But again, 28 to 44 sacks, significant difference, right? So, again, I continue to go back to that. Corey Heatherman is back. I got no reason to believe that this defense, it may not be, exactly, what it was this year, right? Because I think we're going to see a better offense. So I can see maybe the defense not being as, great as it was this past year, but I still see a very, very impactful defense when you look at what you bring back, when you look at on paper, the talent that's there. I know what you're losing, and we'll get into that. But the talent, I think, to me, is there. You have continuity, with your defensive line coach. You have continuity with your defensive ends coach, right? And I think that's the heartbeat of that defense, right? With that, if that D line is right, I think the rest of the defense is going to be right.
Yeah, and I'm thinking numbers off the top of my head. I think against ACC teams in 2024, they averaged almost 35 points a game on defense. Like, they were getting pummeled. And in 2025, it dropped to 24 the points per game. So that's another thing. A two touchdown difference against your conference from last year.
Like, there should be no reason ever that should be a thing in Miami.
Yeah,
like, absolutely no reason. And listen, for everything that people have said about, Mario needs to get these hires right in the whole deal. Like, I get it. He's missed on some guys, right, on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
But the error, the sin there, I should say, is now recognizing that, right? And look, you can look at Al Golden, for example, right? We talked about that. His issue, it's not so much that he got some hires wrong, right? And I don't think Al Golden really was as bad as I think people made him out to be. I think he recruited, decent. He put guys in the NFL at times where he just didn't get the results necessarily. But his biggest sin to me was hiring somebody he couldn't fire, wasn't willing to fire, and that was Mark D'Onofrio, right? So Mario Cristobal is not suffering from the same thing. Mario Cristobal has made some hires that haven't worked out, but has quickly pivoted, and what he's pivoted to has been successful, right? The changes that he's made have been the right changes, and you've seen that in the numbers, you've seen that in the wins, and you see it moving forward, with what it is that you're getting from these guys. And the thing I love, man, with these guys is just, again, you see it in the retention, the culture that has been set there on both sides of the ball is the reason why these guys have lost very little, and especially very little impactful loss in the transfer portal, right? Yeah. You get a guy like, again, to touch a little bit on the offense, right? A guy like Mark Fletcher who didn't enter the draft, right? You look at the guys that you've lost. Listen, I get it, right? You look at a guy like JoJo who wants to play, Chance, Robinson who wants to play. Like, listen, no harm, no foul. Let's, go be great, right? It doesn't always work out. But you look at the guys that you didn't lose, right, in the running back room especially, right? You look at the cornerback room, you were able to keep all those guys. Like, to me, that is a direct reflection of who you've hired that have helped establish a culture, right? And we know how important retention is now, right? It's not only about recruitment and development, right? It's recruitment, development, and retention.
Yep.
And look no further than what those guys did this year, right? Those guys retained, that running back room that nobody thought they'd be able to keep intact, right? With Gerard Pringle, right? With who else stayed?
Chris Wheatley-Humphrey.
Chris Wheatley-Humphrey stayed.
Jordan Lyle.
Jordan Lyle was really kind of like, the big one. People were like, oh, he's going to go. He stayed. You look at that cornerback room, everybody stayed. Look at a deep, talented, young cornerback room, and every one of those guys stayed, right? So again, to me, that speaks directly to who he's brought in, helping establish that culture and helping establish that retention, right? It's a place people want to be a part of, right? It's a culture people want to be a part of. Obviously, they're getting compensated well, which you can't overlook that. But I think by and large, you're looking at a very healthy culture. You're looking at guys who like each other, like being around each other. And now you look at who they brought in the portal, right? And it's not 19, 20, 25 guys. They brought in like a dozen guys, and it's still ranked as like a top 5 or 6 portal class, right? So, again, man, making the right hires, right? You make a mistake, because that's what it was. Some of these guys were mistakes in terms of what it is you saw and how it is you thought they'd fit, on the staff. Listen, fine, no harm, no foul. The foul is not recognizing the mistake you made and pivoting from it. And he has, and you got to respect him for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I absolutely. And again, like you were mentioning, Q, the fact of the matter is the coaches and so on, it's a staff that likes each other. It's a staff that works cohesively well with the head coach as well. And also you got guys that are bought in, and that's the most important thing. I mean, you have guys that are bought in. They like the coaching staff. They like the system. They're seeing the results. For goodness sakes, they played in the national championship this year as well. And I think that Mario has set an amazing building block for the future for years to come. Like you said it best, okay? Talent, depth, experience is one thing. They have that. And then I think Miami's going to be at the point one day where they're going to pick and choose versus heavy recruiting. I think there's going to be guys that want to play for Miami, and Miami's going to have to basically make a decision whether they fit the program or not. I think they're going to get to that point sooner rather than later. Mario said 5 years. We got it there in 4. I think this upcoming season is going to be, it's going to be a very crucial, pivotal season, and I think we're going to see. I will say this. I know I'm Homer, happy Canes fan, Mr. Optimist, but JD PicKell made a joke about Mario Cristobal taking shots at Kirby Smart, and he said that Kirby has a crown. In general, he's going for the king. But I'm going to tell you this, Q. Mario isn't just going for the crown. He's going for the whole damn territory and land. He's coming for that empire. All right. And I do think that this year is going to be very pivotal and critical for that. I do think that if this year Miami takes it to that next level, the great empire that is Georgia is going to start wavering.
Well, and listen, man, I think that's a great transition when you talk about what he wants to accomplish, right? And what you want to accomplish is important, but how you're going to accomplish that is important. And I think they showed this year that they are as physical or more physical than pretty much anybody you're going to play, right? Because you look at, listen, they went 5-0 against the SEC.
Yep.
Right. You can't overlook that. Right. After everybody, and listen, for good reason. I'm not disrespecting the SEC. Like, I know what those guys are, what they traditionally have been, especially, Nick Saban's Alabama, Georgia under Kirby Smart, so on and so forth.
Of course.
But when you look at what those identities have been of the successful teams in the SEC, especially, it starts with physicality, right? And physicality up front, right? Because we know that you cannot win, whether it's the NFL, whether it's college, whether it's high school, it doesn't matter where it is. If you're not physical and you don't win consistently in the trenches, you have no chance of winning, right? We've said, on many occasions, you win with O-line, D-line, quarterback, cornerback. That's how it goes, right? You look at the teams who win consistently, they've got difference makers at those 4 positions, right? Everywhere else, right? It's not that they don't, but they're not as important, right? They're not those premium positions like those 4 are, right? And so they became essentially an SEC team in terms of looks, in terms of body types, right? You heard, we talk about Josh Pate all the time. I don't know if you remember the phrase that he used for Miami before the season started. He said, those guys are creatures.
Yeah.
In the biggest compliment essentially you can give somebody, right? Freaks of nature, creatures, right? Juggernaut looking dudes. Like Miami had those guys. When you look at a guy like like Ruben Bain, who's not your traditional 6'5", kind of 260 type long, tall guy, long arms, that kind of thing, right? That guy's built different, right? Gets it done, right? A guy like Akeem Mesidor, right? A guy who played inside, right? Played inside when he really shouldn't be, right? Didn't really have the size to be a traditional tackle. But, they kicked him inside based on need. And then you look at what he takes that, brings it to the outside. And as a guy, those guys, not only could they rush the passer, but they could set the edge, right? These guys weren't finesse guys like Arbel Reese and some of these other guys. Like, I'm amazed still that everybody absolutely slurps this guy, Arbel Reese. And it's like, I listen, I don't understand. I get the measurables, right? I get it. But at some point, productivity, right? Production has to matter, right? And I get what gets you into the first round, right? Is you get some production, right? But measurables are a big reason why you land in the first round, right? I get Arbel Reese has the measurables, but I don't understand if you watch football, you have eyes and you follow football. I don't understand how you take a guy like Arbel Reese over a guy like Ruben Bain, right? The physicality, the ability to rush the passer, the ability to set the edge. And that's something Miami's going to miss, right? Because you're losing both of those guys. Those guys never came off the field, and they didn't come off the field for a reason, because those guys were just as good against the run as they were against the pass.
Yeah.
Right. And so moving forward, you know, you look at what it is that Mario wants to accomplish is being big, being physical, guys that not only get after the passer, but stop the run. I think that's the biggest question I have moving forward with this defense is who are gonna be the guys that replace Bain and Mesidor in that role and have a similar impact to what it is they had.
Yeah, well, I think you can't replace a Bain or Mesidor. I mean, those guys are unique. Okay, but I do think we have the depth in that, especially in defensive position, to at least be a wrecking force. And I think Damon Wilson, who had a good season, for Mizzou, is going to be very key as well. I was hearing Flo this past Sunday with John and Cafecito. Big shout out to those guys. And they were talking about Marquise Lightfoot and how he needs to get a little bigger. Dude, Marquise is strong. Like he manhandled some of those tackles in the playoffs, and he manhandled one of the blocking running backs as well. Like he's stronger than people give him credit for.
Bo Jackson in that game against Ohio State, he absolutely ran him over at full speed and he didn't skip a beat. He literally ran him over and kept going after Julian Sayin. Like they kept Bo Jackson in the block. And he regretted that because
that's the game I'm talking about. Yeah,
dude, Marquise Lightfoot absolutely ran him over, and he did that to a few people. He did that in the Indiana game. He did that throughout the season. So yeah, I'm right there with you when it comes to that, man. Listen, can he gain a little bit of weight? I guess, right? I don't know, man. I'm not a coach. I'm not I'm not a trainer. I just think with a guy like Marquise Lightfoot, when speed is such an asset, I think you have to be judicious, right? That you have to be careful, right? Yes, gain some weight, right? And I think that's going to come naturally, right? With aging, right? Just a little bit over the course of a few years, I think it'll happen naturally. I just don't think he's a guy who you can be like, oh, let's put another 15 pounds on him, right? It doesn't matter how you want to phrase it. Oh, there's 15 pounds of muscle. I think you have to be. Yeah. You have to be careful with how you put weight on a guy like Marquise Lightfoot.
Yeah, he got recruited because of his speed. I mean, that's the one thing that everybody talked about. And Jason Taylor worked with him on his handwork, which helped him out in the playoffs. It helped him out throughout the season. But he got recruited because of his speed. You don't want to lose that speed because you gain a little bit more muscle. I remember Denzel Perriman said that he didn't mention the coach by name because it was at the school where I used to work at. But he spoke to the kids and he said that basically Al Golden wanted him to gain get to 250, and Denzel Perriman said it, or that his best weight is like 225, 230. That's like where he's, the best, the most agile, the best speed, everything. And Golden wanted him to be like at 250, and it didn't quite work out for Perriman. Perriman had a hell of a year. He's one of the few bright spots in that defense. I mean, he subtly said it slowed him down, to say the least. And you don't want to do that with Marquise Lightfoot. You don't want to stiffen him up, and you don't want to slow him down. Right. He has power, and he's gonna get even stronger as he gets older. He's heading into his third season this year, so he's gonna get stronger as he gets older. But he was recruited because of his speed. I mean, not because of his power.
He's explosive, man. That first step Marquise Lightfoot has is
deadly.
Elite. It's elite. Yep. The way he gets off the ball, right? And I think that's part of it, right? And there again, right? I mean, I'm not Jason Taylor, I'm not any of the trainers, but again, those guys that they have, when you're looking at just body type wise, I think they're different. Like Marquise Lightfoot isn't Akeem Mesidor, right? Marquise Lightfoot isn't Ruben Bain, right? And so I think when you look at how it is they're going to replace the production, I think it's going to come in waves, right? Where you're looking at you're not getting the guys that are necessarily not coming off the field like Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor, but I think now you're coming in waves. And you talked about it the other day, right? Where in your short where you talked about Cole McConaughey moving to tight end.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a view, right? It's kind of in a nutshell. It's what you're looking at, when you're breaking down that defensive end position, right? I think he probably agreed to the position change because I think he saw where he was going to land in that rotation. And I think that's just a good sign in terms of what you've got at defensive end, right? I mean, you're looking at really highly recruited guys, productive guys, right? When they came from high school, again, Marquise Lightfoot, I can't see him not being a starter, right? I can't see Booker Pickett not being
Yeah.
somebody almost filling that Lightfoot role,
Yeah.
right? If that makes sense, right? Now you have Lightfoot as a starter, where now your backup is a guy who's similar build, right? I think almost even more slightly built, in a Booker Pickett, just kind of like Marquise Lightfoot. I think he takes that spot, but I think you line up Lightfoot on one side, let's go with Armando Blunt on one side, and you got Ahmad Moten and Justin Scott. Listen, I get where or let's say Damon Wilson and Lightfoot. You have Armando Blunt, you have Ahmad Moten and Justin Scott starting. However it is you want to do that, because obviously I would imagine Damon Wilson starts. But listen, I know it's not Mesidor and Bain. I know they're gone, but that is nothing to sneeze at.
No,
When you're looking at that starting D line, right? That is absolutely nothing to sneeze at. And I think a D line that will those numbers, I think, will kind of be spread, across multiple guys now.
Yeah.
But I think a D line that is still going to be, a D line that you have to worry about. I think a D line is going to be highly productive, tackles for loss, sacks, that kind of thing. They're just going to accomplish it differently, with more snaps to kind of spread out, coming up in 26.
Yeah, they'll rotate more. And let's not forget Hayden Lowe, who was injured this past season. Guy's built like a senior already, like a high school senior as a true freshman coming in. Herbert Scroggins, another guy that they're raving about in practice. He's another guy that's the third. Sorry. He's absolutely sick, as well. And he's a dog, man. He wants to be great, So, and in the interior as well, you have Justin Scott. You have as well Ahmad Moten, who came back, for one more year as well. And then you have, of course, Jarquez Carter, who I was on top of his recruitment. I was sad when he went to Ohio State, but I'm glad he's back. I'm glad he's, decided to hit the portal and come to Miami. So this team is going to be very, it's going to be very well set. Keona Davis is right. Yes.
From Nebraska.
Transfer from Nebraska. Yep.
Some position versatility, right?
Yeah.
You got some guys, right, that they're Jordan Stansel, I'm sorry,
Keyshawn Stansel.
Keyshawn Stansel. I don't know where I got Jordan. Keyshawn Stansel, who they think is a guy based on body type who's going to play early, right? So, Micah Newton, is another guy who, I think they're kind of, quietly kind of high on. And so, again, man, I think you're looking at that D-line, man, and they're kind of the straw that stirs the drink with this defense, right? You're looking at Jason Taylor, Damian Lewis, the job they're doing on the defense, right? Seamlessly fitting in with Corey Heatherman, right? Same mentality, everybody kind of on the same page when it comes to, what it is that D-line needs to accomplish. And dude, listen, I hate losing those guys. I hate losing, Bain and Mesidor, but what they've got coming behind them, honestly, man, I don't think there's much to be concerned with, or any reason to think that these guys can't pick up the slack, and fill those shoes in. I mean, just extremely, extremely well.
Yeah, man, I totally agree, man. I totally agree. I got no, you're getting no pushback from me. Like I said, to win championships, you need a solid offensive line and you need a solid defensive line. Miami's got both, and I think that Miami, once again this year, it's gonna be more rotational. Okay, it's more rotational, but they have a championship defensive line. All right, all these guys can stop the run. They're also wrecking balls as well. In terms of causing disruption from the interior, from the outside as well. So Corey Heatherman has a lot to play with on defense. All right, and I think D-Lou and JT are very, very happy coaches right now. Glad we didn't lose them to the NFL. I will say that. Which is kind of interesting. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I know the guys on Canes Inside. I've listened to them a little bit. I know they were talking about that. I don't know. They always seem to kind of insinuate that Will Harris coming back isn't like a done deal just yet.
Okay.
Because of the NFL. I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully that's not the case. But there again, man, like, listen, if those guys leave, if a Will Harris, takes off to the NFL, man, look, you salute him, man. Appreciate what you did. But again, I continue to go back to the same thing. Look, we brought back Shannon Dotson on offense, bringing back Corey Heatherman on defense. The rest is details, right? I think they're going to be able to, between what you've got in Mario Cristobal in terms of his eye for talent on the coaching side of things. You're looking at Corey Heatherman, a guy who's going to be able to identify somebody, to bring in and and be able to assimilate to the defense he's putting on. Then look, I'm okay with it. Again, do I want those guys to leave? No. But there again, right? I think you have to trust in what it is you've got in your head coach and in your coordinators. And when it comes time to replace somebody, you just hope that, that those guys, identify the right person, they get the right guy in there, and the transition is seamless. That's really, really all you can do. But you can't cry over coaches leaving, man. That's the game. That is what it is. Those guys, the days of these guys being lifers, in college. Honestly, man, I mean, I think those days are done, right? You look at Zach Etheridge and a guy like Matt Merritt, young guys, right? By and large, these are young dudes. And I think there's a relatability there that's why you like those guys in your building and in the position room. But at the end of the day, when the NFL comes knocking, I think you have to answer that, right? You have to take that opportunity because, there's those opportunities don't come every year, right? And so you gotta strike when the iron's hot. You get that job opportunity, man, and that offer, you got to take it, man. So good luck to those guys. But again, I stand by what I've said. As long as the head coach and the coordinators are there, man, I think moving forward, I think we're going to be fine. And you look at the linebacker position now, right? And a position where we lost a guy in Popo Aguirre, who transfers to NC State. Slightly surprised by that one, right? I think that he's a guy. I think if he would have stayed, I think he starts, or plays a lot. I think from all accounts, Mo Torre, coming back for his, I think his 19th season in college, if I'm not mistaken. I think, by all accounts, I think that affected his decision, and I think he
did actually.
That, because of him playing the mic and so did Popo. But listen, man. Again, you can't worry about who's not going to be in the room, right? When you look at that position, I think, and we'll get to the DBs right after, but I think the linebacker room still in 26 will be the position group that I think is the least impactful, least talented, at least at the front line. When you're looking at Mo Torre, probably a guy like Chase Smith who it shocks me is still around. It's wild that guy is still playing college football. But again, Torre's like 36 at this point. I think Chase Smith is like 34. You bring those guys back, but I think behind them, where I'm looking at, and I think guys who are are probably going to make an impact this year on some level is you look at Kellen Wiley. You look at a guy like Bobby Pruitt, who's not going into his third year in the system or in the program, I should say. You're looking at the linebacker from Central. God, literally just had his name.
Marcelin?
Well, exactly. Z Marcelin. Right. And so I think there's some talent there, right? I'm really excited about Kellen Wiley. And, I think he's a big kid, a guy who kind of a late bloomer, highly recruited kid kind of at the end of the cycle. But what do you think? Tell me about your view on the linebacker position and how that looks in 26.
All right. Well, first and foremost, I want to promise the people that are tired of me talking about Popo in general. I promise this will be the last time. All right, I promise.
That's it. This last time. That's it.
Yeah, I know his dad personally, so I have a bias towards the kid. So please forgive me, and stuff like that.
Hey, I wanted him here. I didn't want him to transfer. I was
neither did I. Neither did I. Well, I was surprised too, but his dad told me. I mean, and I'm not outing him because he said the same thing on Twitter that it's all about snaps. Like with Mo coming back, and Chase probably as he's got to share with Chase as well. So I guess he wanted to be Mike. In general, I thought he would start next to Mo Torre, but I think he wants to be the Mike linebacker. And he wants to go to the NFL, and he figures with Mo Torre being there, he's gonna lose, tackles and snaps and playing time. And he had about 43 tackles. If you remove the Torre out of the equation, he's looking at 90 tackles possibly this season because he's not a flashy guy. He's not gonna kill you when he hits you, but he's effective. He's efficient, and that's pretty much it. So best of luck to him. I'm glad he went to NC State. He reunited he's with his brother, by the way, so it's a family thing. His brother's a true freshman over there, so we're not playing him. So that's another good thing too. So
JoJo and Chance
and Chance as well. Yeah. So they got a few of our guys. But the thing with Popo, going back to that a little bit, is that his leadership is going to be missed. When Mo was not out there and he took over for the linebackers, he was the one putting people in place. He was the one calling the signals, on behalf of Coach Heatherman in general. So we're going to miss that aspect of him when it comes to leadership, when Mo has to like step off or, whatever the case to be, and you're going to be relying on young guys. But talent-wise, Q, I think we're very good. All of the linebackers were highly recruited, okay? Jordan Campbell, is coming in as a true freshman. Guy's an absolute stud. He's already built like he could play from day one, right, as well. Marcelin was a killer on special teams, right? As well, he's gonna get in the rotation this year. I'm almost sure of it, based upon his play, his drive, his motivation, and his hard work at practice. Let's not forget Cam Bobby Pruitt, a little undersized but electrically fast. He's a nightmare for guys in space. He could tackle in space as well. So this is a unit that I think is going to play better than people anticipate. There will be more rotation pieces out of it as well. But I think bringing a guy like Toure, who's like 800 years old, in general, and has that much experience,
at least.
It's least, it's going to be helpful. Mind you, he's younger than you, bro. Yeah, he is.
Barely.
Yeah.
Barely.
But yeah, man. But again, it's going to be a pretty good group. Again, any position coached by Heatherman is going to play really good football. Wesley Bissain had a very good year. Chase Smith in his limited time showed out all right as well. Popo had a decent season, 43 tackles. He led the team in tackles against Notre Dame. He had 6 tackles in the game. The unit is going to be pretty good. I think it's going to be a good unit. It's going to stand out. It's going to stop the run. And we'll find the right guys if we have to put them in pass coverage.
Yeah, I think, you hate to lose a guy like Popo. Just, again, you start with the talent, that you go into the leadership, right? A green dot guy, right? Calling the plays and the whole deal, a guy who was well liked in the locker room, a respected guy, a guy who I think was primed to, come in 26 and build on what it is he had done and set himself up for, possibly going to the NFL after year 3. And so, again, man, you hate to lose a guy like that, right? Because again, by all accounts, he was a guy who was well respected, well liked in the whole deal. Obviously not ideal, but you look at what you have in the room, and I'm with you. I think the room is layered in a way that I think it sets up well for these young guys, right? I think, a guy like Chase Smith was a pleasant surprise last year, right? I think, the guy, I would have never guessed that he would have been playing the snaps that he did play, right? I mean, coming down to the wire, and you look on the field, and all of a sudden you're like, who the hell's 41 out there, playing? You're like, holy hell, it's Chase Smith, right? And never would have guessed that he'd be playing when he was playing, right? But, again, you're looking at 26 after Toure and Chase Smith. Listen, and Toure, as old as he was, you got to remember he was coming back from a major injury.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think, even at his age, even with his experience, I think you look at it and you go, listen, him coming back from the injury, he may not have been, because later on in the season is when Toure really started to make the impact, literally, because he was knocking dudes out, and figuratively, right? The impact that I think the program was looking for to start the season, I think later on in the season is when he really showed up consistently, made plays, big hits, timely, impact on the game. And so if you're looking at where that, kind of projects to next year, right? He's going to be, a year older. He's going to be hopefully healthier. And so you got to like where you sit at there, right? Then you got a guy like Chase Smith, obviously a ton of experience also, hopefully continues to be healthy this offseason. And then Kellen Wiley, I think kind of, slots in there perfectly in terms of, what it is you're going to want to have in terms of, a dude who can fill that role, right? A big linebacker who can move, who can rush the passer. A guy like Bobby Pruitt, who can cover, fast running backs out of the backfield, right? Zeke Marcelin, who I think is probably going to be able to do the same. Your losses, again, man, you always have to look at what it is, that walked out the door. And no disrespect to anybody who left, right? Popo, you look at, is it Bobby Washington?
Bobby Washington, yeah.
Who's Robbie's brother, right?
Yeah.
A guy who, again, we've talked about it. What walked out of your program? Did production walk out, or did potential walk out? A guy like Robbie Washington was potential. He was a guy who, 6'2.5", 6'3", track fast for a linebacker, but the guy couldn't stay healthy. And so you root for a guy like that, right? Played at Palmetto locally, guy in Miami's backyard. But at the end of the day, man, like, look, if when you've been around that long and you haven't contributed, right? We talk about, your best ability is what? Availability. And if you're not available, listen, man, you're going to get passed over. And that's how it goes. And unfortunately for that guy, he wasn't healthy. And so listen, man, again, salute to him, good luck, wherever. I don't know if he's landed out of school yet. I know his brother did at East Carolina, but he's a guy who, potential, right? Size, speed, that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, they didn't lose production. They didn't lose anything that can't be replaced. And so you're looking at what you have, in terms of your the guys backing up Toure and Chase Smith, and you got to be excited, man. They're guys that were highly recruited. They're guys with ability. They're guys that have contributed on special teams, right? Bobby Pruitt, Ezekiel Marshall, and that kind of thing. And so I think the next step is for those guys to transition from, being special teams contributors to, being, first, second, third down contributors. And so I think, hopefully we get to see some of that this year. But again, man, I think the linebacker position, is the probably of the three position groups, the one I'm least excited about. But it's only because the D line, and we'll get to the corners, are loaded, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's that, not so much that I'm not high on the room. I just think it's the other two rooms are just so loaded with talent that the linebacker room just kind of falls into third place, just naturally speaking.
Yeah. Lion King 62. Yeah, we forgot about Camille Bonner. Camille Bonner was injured last season.
Yes.
Yeah,
and he'll absolutely.
Yeah, and he's probably gonna get a lot of run from what I heard this year. So forgot about Camille Bonner.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. Good call on that right there, man. Lion King 62. Yeah, man. Good catch on that. Totally forgot about him. Yeah, man. He's a guy that last year, just couldn't contribute because he wasn't healthy. And I think he's a guy that when he landed there, I think he's a guy who I think people were so twofold, right? You always look at the transfer, you look at where they left and what people's response is to them leaving. And by all accounts, they did not want to lose a guy like Kamal Bonner, right? But again, a guy who, if he's healthy, I think he's a guy who I think is gonna contribute. So again, man, one more talented guy added to the body count and in that room. And again, man, if everything plays out the way we want it to, man, I think Kamal Bonner is going to be a guy who figures, into that rotation, a guy who's going to get significant snaps, and a guy who I think everybody is ready to see play and see what he brings to the field, man. So yeah, good call on that, Lion King. I totally forgot about Kamal Bonner.
Yeah, so did I.
Yeah, then we move on to the DBs, man, and we had the conversation the other day about the receivers. Right. And we talked about, who our favorite position group on the offense was. Right. And I think you and AD mentioned, I think running back, right, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. But I mentioned my favorite, the position group I was most excited about was receiver. Right. And I think, quick, just kind of a quick recap on that. It's because of what we have coming in at quarterback. Right. And what you're pairing, with that quarterback. And I think this is as deep and talented as a wide receiver room, personally, as I've seen at Miami right now. We'll see what the production is going to be. But dude, you've got 10 receivers. You've literally got 10 receivers in that room that I think could legitimately gain, significant snaps this year. So when you look at the equivalent of that on the defense, to me, it's the cornerback room.
Yeah.
And listen, man, I get what you're losing, right? I understand. I'm not underestimating that by any stretch of the imagination. I understand what Keionte Scott, was. You can make I think you can make a significant argument that if he wasn't the best player on the defense, he was the second best player no worse than the second best player on this defense this year. Like, to me, right? I think you look at, again, Bain, Keionte Scott, and I think you noticed the difference when Keionte Scott wasn't on the field. Not that you wouldn't have, without Ruben Bain. Like, I get it. But Keionte Scott was an absolute stud, was an absolute grand slam of a portal addition, right? You look at, who else you lost, right? Jacoby Thomas. What he brought, this year to that back line, absolutely invaluable. That dude was knocking dudes out left and right, making hugely impactful plays, right? The interception against NC State, right, where he's calling CJ Bailey over, right?
Yeah,
he ran
trying to make a tackle. That was great.
Yeah, right before he got in the end zone and everything. And so, listen, man, what they've lost, important. You lost leadership, you lost production, you lost talent, you lost guys that immediately from day one came in from the portal and established themselves as alphas, as leaders, as guys who were going to produce, right? And without big fanfare, right? And again, man, one more thing that I give this staff credit for is their evaluations, right? Identifying guys who are going to be good in their system and bringing those guys in, right? Because nobody was celebrating Jacoby Thomas coming in. Nobody at Tennessee was going, damn, we lost Jacoby Thomas. I can't believe we lost him, right? Keontae Scott was a guy who transitioned to outside corner, right, the year before at Auburn and didn't play well, right? He went back to corner, right, which is where he was really good the year before that. And look at what he did, right? He's going to get taken in probably the top 2 rounds, right? So on and so forth, man. You're looking at the guys that left, impactful guys. But what I think is left in these rooms, especially at corner, I think you have to applaud it, man. They kept that cornerback room intact, right? You didn't lose anybody, who you wanted to keep, and they are absolutely loaded when you go top to bottom. I mean, there is no shortage of dudes in that cornerback room that again, after your starters, it's probably going to be Xavier Lucas and OJ, more than likely. Dude, but after your starters, there is just talent backing up talent in that cornerback room.
Yeah, and then there's a lot of depth, especially, and it's eligible depth. It's guys that could be here for a long time if they decide to. I mean, OJ Frederic, Damari Brown, and then you have, of course, Xavier Lucas as well, who, by the way, just found out they may change the targeting rules because of what happened to him in the national championship game. So
that's great timing.
Yeah, all right. They may change that rule. I thought that call was dumb. I thought he should have been called for targeting, and I'm not being biased because I felt the same way about the Georgia safety in the Ole Miss game as well. I thought that if you use your shoulder, you should not be thrown out of a game. You're playing defense. If you lunge with your helmet and you hit with a crown, it's a different story. But it was all shoulder, both those guys, and they got thanks, Danny. Appreciate you, man.
Is it his name's Danny?
Yeah.
Oh, I got you, Danny. Appreciate you tuning in, brother.
Yeah, man. So that's about it. But aside from that, okay, you have depth. You have Jabari Antoine. You have Chris Ewald. Yeah. What happened?
Ethan O'Connor.
Ethan O'Connor is another one too. You have, of course, Brody Jennings coming in, as a true freshman. Seabolt Waters. You just picked up that kid from JUCO who's a good athlete. Got 3 picks, and 2 of them were pick sixes.
Yeah, 180. Something Aziz or something like that. I think.
Yeah. I know last name is Aziz. I can't remember the first name.
Trey T, right? A Trey T guy, right? 6'3", 180, right? Guy, that size, and that corner, right? I mean, listen, at the very least, a guy helps out on special teams or something like that. So
exactly the same thing. Omar Thornton, Conrad Hussey's a pretty good player, right? As well, very underrated. Conrad Hussey's another one too. So there's a lot of depth, man. I'm excited about our DB room. Bryce Fitzgerald's coming back. Poizer's coming back.
100%. Those guys coming back, man. Another year, in that system. Guys who, listen, man. Again, great evaluations, in the portal. Putting these guys in positions to succeed. A guy in Bryce Fitzgerald, right, who came in, who was a summer enrollee, right? I mean, he wasn't there in the spring.
Yeah.
Showed up in the summer. Was impactful. From the word go. Again, guys that you've lost, right? You would, I think, in my opinion, a guy like Amari Wallace, who you would have liked to have seen maybe what you have with him, so on and so forth. But again, man, you didn't lose anybody that you wanted to keep. Right? No disrespect to anybody, who left, right? No disrespect to a guy like Amari Wallace, but I think Amari Wallace saw, like everybody else, right? It was a deep and talented, cornerback room, defensive back room, and a guy that maybe, again, he saw that he wasn't going to have the opportunity to play, and said, hey man, listen, I got to go somewhere and get snaps. And so listen, no worries, no harm, no foul. I think when you're looking at that room again, bro, Lion King coming with
I know. I was about to say, bro. I saw that.
Lion King coming with heat. Hey, a guy in Ryan Mack who, listen, I've wondered, to myself, like, what's going on with a guy like Ryan Mack who, when he was at the Under Armour All-American game when he came out of high school, was a guy who, the guy was out there doing things, man, who dominated, but a guy who hasn't been healthy, right? And so
Dylan Day too. We got that one. Dylan Day's another one.
Dylan Day is a heat-seeking missile. Like
that
guy, when he gets on the field, the guy was a terror on special teams. The guy who's usually talking trash to somebody. He was always out there talking trash. 23, always saying something to somebody. So again, I think a guy who's going to figure heavily in the rotation this year. Again, Ryan Mack, if he's healthy. So again, man, listen, man, you really, really have to like, what it is that you've got in that room, man. Again, just lots and lots of talent. You were able to keep it all there through retention. And this is, again, we get a comment here from David Scott, 2095. You think Mario and Mirabal knew something we don't by not really bringing a lot of portal offensive linemen and center? So before we answer that, I'm gonna preface my answer with like answering it kind of indirectly. When you're looking at what they brought in the portal, I think we're looking at 12 dudes. I think maybe with that kid Aziz, I think it brought up to 13, right? Somewhere in that range, right? So before Aziz, which I don't think was gonna move them up, either way, a guy who's gonna be, I think they said he's gonna be a walk-on. But again, a guy with traits who, you'll see what you have in him. But a small class that ended up, in the top 10 for sure. I think they were 6, 7, right? Somewhere around there. And don't quote me on that, but I know they were a top 10 portal class with only like 12 guys. But I think they were very deliberate in what it is you were bringing in the portal. Why? Because I think you're happy with your roster and where it sits, right? I think on the offensive line, we talked about it, last episode, the one position group on there that I'm not like super thrilled about, just in terms of the experience, is offensive line. But you give that position group the benefit of the doubt because you've got Mario, because you've got, a Mirabal. Mm-hmm. But I think across the board, what it is they brought in, the offensive line, the same, same point, is they weren't going to bring in guys that weren't going to be impactful guys. Who did they go after? Who did they go after at the offensive line? Who do you remember them openly going after the offensive line? It was Jordan Seaton, right? A guy who, again, the number one transfer tackle in the country. I think they make an exception for guys of that caliber, right? They try to go after him. Figure, the money was way too much, based on everything, that all the reports that are out there, and they let him walk, right? But they were comfortable going after a guy like that because he was going to be a guy who was going to be impactful. He's a guy who was going to come in and start from day one. Those are the guys that I think they're identifying as, hey, listen, if we're going to bring people in, those are the guys we're going to bring in. And I think you go across the board at your position groups and you see what they brought in. It's a direct reflection of what they think of their position groups, right? They're like, hey, listen, we love the roster. We're going to bring in guys who are going to be experienced. And we're going to make an impact. We're not going to bring in Jags, right? We're not going to bring in, just a guy just to say we brought him in, right? The roster, we like where it's at. We like where it sits. If we can bring somebody in who's impactful, we'll bring them in. If not, then we're not going to. And that right there is a reason why their strategy across the board at O-line and otherwise was what it was.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree with you. I mean, I can't push back on anything of what you said. And Joel Everett is going to be an absolute beast. I totally agree with you. That's another thing too. As far as we brought in 7 linemen in this recruiting class, and they're all high quality guys. Okay, as well, they're high quality guys, big, strong, multifaceted as well, extremely athletic. So guys, watch out for Cannon Pickett. Okay, watch out for Cannon Pickett on that roster. The kid could block in space. The kid could pass protect. The kid could run block as well. Highly intelligent, super athletic. So that Pickett family, man, good genetics when it comes to athletics.
Yeah, I think right now when you're talking about the O-line, I think the interior feels like it's. No, I guess probably the interior kind of feels like it's there's more bodies and maybe than at tackle. Yeah, I think you've got your tackle bodies, right? A guy like Ben Congdon, you got obviously Jackson Cantwell. When you look at the interior, right, Joel Irvin, I think he's probably going to be an interior guy. You look at Cannon Pickett, probably going to be an interior guy. I'm assuming he's going to be a guard. Max Buchanan, right? I mean, you've got was it Sparks?
JJ Sparks.
Yeah, JJ Sparks. So on and so forth, right? So SJ Alifai-Tuli, we'll see if he's going to be a center or guard. But I think your interior of your line, I think, is in really good shape. I think there's probably more bodies and maybe a little bit more, more there to work with maybe than there is outside. Even though you've got some guys outside, obviously, like I mentioned, Congdon, Cantwell. Yeah. You've got the 2 tackles they brought in last year. Who's man, those 2 names escape me now. Somebody knows in the chat, man. Please tell me. I totally forgot.
Jaden Wilkerson.
There you go. Lion Kane, dude. Lion Kane coming with a heat time. Jaden Wilkerson and Campbell, 100%. That's who they are. Yeah, Jaden Wilkerson. I think those guys. I don't think that anything happened to them as much as it was just they were freshmen last year. Yeah. And when you talk about you were playing behind CeCe Mainoa and you were playing behind Markel Bell. They're just those guys were healthy the entire year. There just wasn't a lot of snaps to to really give anybody else. So I think that they had the benefit of being healthy. The only real injury last year on the offensive line that that really carried any weight was Ryan Rodriguez. Right, started I think he started right. I believe he started game 1 and then just was.
He did against Notre Dame, yeah.
Yeah, he hurt the rest of the year, right? But again, aside from Ryan Rodriguez, I think we were able to absorb that that injury with you had Matt McCoy playing a bunch, right? You had Pancake, finally contributing, and looking really good. And so again, I think those guys. I think they were raw. It was the other thing. I don't think those guys were ever going to be guys that, they were ever looking at to make an impact day one. I think those guys were, they were 3-star guys for a reason. They were developmental guys. They had traits. I think, they liked where they were at in terms of, height, arm length, movement skills, that kind of thing. But I think there were guys who, by and large, I think were raw. So I don't know that it was really anything that happened to them as much as they were stuck behind NFL draft picks and guys that were healthy the whole year.
Yeah, no, yeah. The offensive line is. It's gonna be growing pains with them a little bit because there's not enough experience, in game action. But I think by the time they get to the bulk of the season, this unit will be very cohesive. It's like I said, some similarities to me. I know I've got some pushback for saying that, but some similarities to me with 2023, where you had a true freshman and CC starting. You had some experience, with Jalen Rivers and Javion Cohen as well, Matt Lee, but they hadn't really had to play together. Javion Cohen has coming from Alabama. Jalen Rivers has had some injury issues. Matt Lee was coming from UCF, Central Florida. Ines Cooper was still a sophomore. So you had some inexperience and not enough cohesion. But the bottom line is, I do think that that line did pretty well. For me, quarterback was the problem that season more so than line play. So I think it'll be the same thing this season. A little bit of growing pains, but you're not starting with Notre Dame. All right. You're starting with Stanford. Okay. And then you have Wake Forest, which should be a win. And then by the time you get to Clemson and Notre Dame, this team should be a lot more ready, more cohesive.
Lion King with a question. Do you think they'll get a shot at the guard position? Listen, man, I feel like, and again, obviously I don't know this with any certainty. I haven't been told this. I'm not an insider or anything like that. It seems like to me like those guys were tackles coming out of high school, and they're like tackle bodies, if that makes sense, right? I think we all know that Mario and Mirabal, they cross train their guys, right? Yeah. So filling in here and there, could be, I'm not sure. I don't know those guys are what their role will be this year. They might be guards, right? I don't know. That to not be the case necessarily. But I think by and large, you're looking at both of those guys, and I think they were Jaden Wilkerson and Demetrius Campbell were guys who, are traitsy guys at tackle. Like I said, length, their height, their arm length, guys who move well on the outside and everything like that. I just think they were more developmental guys, that they were just kind of raw. But it seems like to me, based on body types, I'm only going based on body types. My guess would be that they're going to be that their plan for those guys is to be a tackle.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
Time will tell.
We'll see. Yeah, time will tell. We'll see. We'll see. Spring game might give us a little bit of an indication of who's going to start and so on. But like I said, there's always surprises with Coach Cristobal and Coach Mirabal. All we know is that the best guys will play. They definitely will play. All right, so we'll see what happens. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Ryan Downey cheering for the Hoosiers.
Yeah, without doubt. Here we go. Ryan Downey. Come on, man. What are we doing? Listen, man. I'm gonna just be nice. Listen. Congrats to them. That's all I'll say. Congrats.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it, Lion.
Sore loser. By the way, thank you guys for sticking to football talk instead of the usual gibberish that you commonly hear from Kane Podcast. You guys are brother. Appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much, man.
Thanks, man.
Do a huge favor, man, if you can like and subscribe to both of the channels, man. To 305 Sports Now,
Thanks, brother.
Football Pod on X, and we definitely appreciate the love and support, man. We love doing it, and have a blast with it, man. It's easy to do when you love the program. So. Don't forget Merriweather Klein. Yeah. Jamal Merriweather, I think, is a guy, based on, where he came from, right? I think, you look at what Georgia does at that position, man, and it's to be respected. Guys, you know what's funny is I was having a conversation with a dude earlier. Obviously, for those who don't know, I am in the Metro Atlanta area. So with that being said, I'm sure you know that, again, that's in Northeast Georgia. Athens is in Northeast Georgia. And that's where the University of Georgia is, right? So I tend to have some pretty animated conversations with Georgia fans, and luckily, Miami, gave me a lot to talk about this year because typically,
Yeah.
over the course of most of my time up here, I have not been able to say a whole bunch, when it comes to Miami versus Georgia. But we were having a conversation, and I told the guy, I was like, look, I told you a while back, Stacy Searels at offensive line as your coach was not going to be somebody you were going to be happy with. He was a guy who was here under Manny. He was a guy who did not recruit well, did not develop the position well. And when Georgia hired him, I was slightly surprised. So I was like, man, you replace a guy, and I'm pretty sure he replaced Sam Pittman, Sam Pittman was a guy who, again, highly respected, recruited well, developed well, put guys in the NFL, and that's what got him the job at Arkansas. How that went, right? Early on, some success. Later on in his tenure there, not successful. But I say all that to say, when Georgia recruits an offensive lineman, you have to give them credit. Those guys tend to hit on offensive linemen, right? They put a lot of guys in the NFL. And so traditionally, they have recruited the position well and developed the position well. So that being said, a guy like Jamal Merriweather, from all accounts, is a guy who left Georgia because he wanted more snaps. He saw that maybe happening for him at Miami, and is a guy who, listen, I think when it's all said and done, if you tell me that Jamal Merriweather is going to be like the starting, like right guard or something, I mean, I don't think I'd be surprised. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, but I wouldn't be surprised.
That's the rumor that he's going to probably be the right guard alongside with Jackson Cantwell. That's what I've been hearing. Klein, I've heard a lot about him. He'll be a rotational piece. I've heard he might even be the starting center. That's another one I heard as well, that he could be up for the center role as well. So, I mean, so we'll see what, like I said, we'll see what happens. All I know is that they're happy with that position because they have not gone portal this year, right? They had Matt Lee, they had Brockemeyer, and they had Henderson. I always call him Henderson, right? Zach Henderson? Cam Ward's ear. Is it Henderson? It's Henderson, right?
What was it? He played what?
The center.
Oh, Zach Carpenter.
Carpenter. I always call him Henderson for whatever reason, dude.
Yeah,
I don't know why. I always call him Henderson in general, but they haven't gone portal this year, is what I'm trying to say. So they do like the room, whether it's SJ, Max Buchanan is another one, might throw his hat in the ring there.
Ryan
Rodriguez, another one there as well. And Klein is another one. So I've been hearing a bunch of names. So again, the spring game is going to tell us exactly whom they like, especially if they run with the ones. So we'll see exactly how it happens.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, Lion King has a question for us, brother.
Let's see. Who'd you guys like to see as the cornerbacks coach? Oof, bro, that's one of those questions, man. I think anytime those questions come around, you're always kind of big game hunting, right? I wouldn't mind seeing a guy like Corey Raymond, right? Who's a guy that who has recruited. He's always been known as one of the best recruiters, right, of his generation. Really, you look at who that guy landed at Florida, at LSU, right? The guys landed, just 5 stars, All-Americans, high draft picks and everything. So, again, just based on his ability to recruit, I would say a guy like Corey Raymond. Pat Surtain is a guy who, with his connections down, in South Florida, obviously, being at American Heritage and doing all that, is a guy who, I've heard mixed reviews on in terms of what people, would feel about him being hired, but I don't know that I would hate the hire. I think, you got to sit there and wait, see what develops. With these position coaches, you look at, there's so many programs, and that Mario does a thorough search, right? Because nobody's been hired yet. You don't even know who's been interviewed, yet. And again, kind of go back to where his previous hires came from, right? And Zach Etheridge wasn't a guy who was a super highly celebrated hire, right? You're looking at a guy like Matt Merritt, wasn't a super highly celebrated hire either, and both of those guys are now off to the NFL, right? And so again, man, he's traditionally, if you look around, you have to imagine he's going to come from a smaller program, right? Kevin Beard came from Akron, Kent State?
No, Toledo.
Toledo. There you go. Right.
He came from Toledo. Yeah.
Came from Toledo. Right. Obviously, Mirabal is his shadow, so he's always with him. When you look on the offensive side of the ball, again, Matt Merritt came from USF. Kevin Beer came from Toledo. You look on defense, right? Jason Taylor was a GA. He was an analyst. He was in high school, right? Damian Lewis came from Colorado. Will Harris came from Florida, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Will Harris came from Florida, and Etheridge was from Houston.
And Etheridge was at Houston, right? So,
yeah.
I say all that to say you probably would, your money would probably be safe putting it on somebody from a small school. That's the best I can tell you, because that tends to be, Hetherin came from Minnesota, right? A Big Ten school, but not a huge big time program. And so, I really don't know in terms of who gets the job, who I would like to see get the job, man. Just to me, I always go back to recruiting, right? We know recruiting is a lifeblood of any program. You have to be a good recruiter. You have to bring in talent. So anybody who's a good recruiter, somebody hopefully who's got, some South Florida ties, right? Kind of tap back into, that defensive back talent in Florida, specifically South Florida. So I know I'm probably not telling you much there because it's probably on everybody's wish list, but that's really where I'm at with a potential quarterback hire.
Yeah, for me, it will be Pat Surtain, just because of the legacy with the Miami Dolphins, reuniting with Jason Taylor, who was his teammate when he was in Miami. His connections to South Florida, winning a state championship with American Heritage, as well. He's a good recruiter as well. He was not the problem at Florida State. Mike Norvell was the problem over at Florida State, right? As well. I would like to see DeMarcus Van Dyke, getting a chance to come back, right? As well. So we'll see. Like, he was a good recruiter. Even though he was a GA at the time, but he did work with the cornerbacks. He had a good relationship with a lot of the cornerbacks as well. I know it's a name that people don't want to mention, but he was highly involved in the recruitment of Cormani McClain when Cormani McClain was a top DB in the state. I'm sorry, in the country. DeMarcus Van Dyke was the dude that was on him. He obviously spoke about the relationship he had with DVD. So I wouldn't mind seeing a reunion, but I would like to see Pat Surtain. My personal opinion.
Yeah, listen, I wouldn't be mad at the hire.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be mad at the hire. I think he's a guy. Again, it all comes back to recruiting. For me, and I don't, obviously he's a guy who can recruit. I don't think he's a guy who can only recruit, right? I think you're looking at a guy who as a high school coach, right? A guy who put a lot of top talent at the position into big time D1 programs, right? I mean his kid is arguably the best corner in the in the NFL, right? And so again, man, I think you can do a lot worse than Pat Surtain. I think the list of guys he's interviewing, or obviously you're never going to know about because that stuff just never gets out. I think everybody at best is speculating. I know there's been some stuff said about was it Tony Jefferson?
I think it's Terry
Jefferson. I'm sorry, Terry Jefferson, who was the corners coach. Who, again, man, if he's the one who ends up getting it, again, the hire, whoever they bring in, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt based on, their recent track record of bringing in, good coaches who fit the system. And you go from there, man. Obviously, everybody wants somebody we're familiar with, right? We're big into name recognition, right? We're big into, we hear that name, we're like, oh, man, we know him from, such and such, and he's recruited such and such, and he's developed such and such. We'll see, man. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully, again, hopefully he's a guy who comes in and fits the scheme seamlessly, as a guy who can recruit, help Mario out, and we'll see what results come from that. So, would you rather have a great recruiter, great developer? Ooh, that's a good question, man. That's a good question. I'll let you take that one, bro. I want both. I want a clear.
You gotta have both, bro.
And we had that.
We gotta be honest with you.
In Zach Etheridge, right? We had that in Zach Etheridge. He's a guy who.
Yeah, you gotta have both. And let me explain why you gotta have both. Because Chevis Jackson was a hell of a recruiter. He was a good recruiter, but from what I've heard as well, he wasn't the best developer of talent. Aside from the season that he had, with the cornerbacks, he wasn't the best developer of talent. So I'd rather have both. I know it sounds silly, it sounds like a cop-out answer, but it's the truth, man. Because I'll give you an example. Mike Rump Now, I also fault the fact that university didn't invest in the program at the time. But Mike Rump was a good cornerbacks coach. He won a state championship in American. He goes and coaches with Coach Diaz. He's a pretty good developer of talent. But the knock on Mike was that on Coach Rump is that he wasn't a recruiter. Now, Miami, the university, wasn't investing a lot in the program at the time. And if you want to be a good recruiter, you also need money, right? You got to go travel, the country. You have to, wine and dine these players, as well. And Shalala at the time didn't want to spend that money. But that's the reputation. Mike Rump was great at developing, but he wasn't known as the best recruiter. All right. So that's just what I'm saying. Yeah. So you need to have both, especially if you're an assistant coach, in general, you need to have a little bit of both. You need to be a good developer and you need to be a recruiter as well.
So where I'm at with that, right? And you make really good points, man. I'm going to go with developer, right? And the reason why I'm going to go with developer, to answer Lion King's question, is you're in a program where your lead recruiter, no matter what the position is, quarterback, O-line, running back, receiver, D-line, linebacker, corner, safety, it does not matter, right? Your lead recruiter for like 75% of your roster is going to be who? Mario Cristobal.
Yeah.
Right?
True.
Who is an elite recruiter. Right? You look at it, and they don't rank when the lists come out every year of best recruiters, right, in the country. They don't rank head coaches. They rank assistant coaches, right? And there's always a very direct correlation between who's landing in those spots and who their head coach is, right? And when you look at those spots, Nick Saban's assistants were there, Kirby Smart's assistants were there, Ryan Day's assistants were there, so on and so forth, right? And Lincoln Riley, his assistants are there, right? So on and so forth, right? Like the usual suspect. But we all know at the University of Miami that the lead recruiter, by and large, is going to be Mario Cristobal. So when you look at who your lead recruiter is and a guy who obviously does it at an elite level, you look at Cristobal. So what I want to see at the cornerback position is a guy who can develop that talent. Right now, you have to have a guy that across the board. You have to have a guy who who is good at building relationships. You have to have a guy who builds rapport with players quickly, so on and so forth. And that all goes without saying. But if we're picking just one, right? If we're recruiter, developer at the cornerback position, I'm going to say developer, because ultimately what ends up happening is you're recruiting talent, but talent needs to be developed, right? Talent needs to be developed. And so if you're doing that, that's going to speak volumes, right? Because, and what do I mean by that? Guys who are, they're playing higher than maybe their recruiting status, right? Because there may be 3 stars, maybe low 4 stars, becoming, impactful guys, all ACC guys, all American guys, right? And going into the league. So if you're developing guys, I think that's the best recruiting tool, right? Because that's where Nick Saban always thrived. That's where Kirby Smart has thrived. Those guys are putting guys in the NFL. And what does that speak to? It speaks to development, right? So if you have a guy that is developing players and what that looks like is putting guys in the league, then that's going to be all the press that you have to have from those guys, right? If you're putting that position group into the league, that means you're developing guys and you're going to naturally attract players at that particular position. So,
but I think personally, like for a position coach, you need to have both. And the reason being is because when you talk to a lot of players, we talk to a lot of players in general. Why did you go to Miami? Oh man, Corey. Why'd you go to certain school? Oh, Corey Raymond, man. Like he was like like a big brother to me and stuff like that. And so on. Yeah, DVD. Like DVD was the lead recruiter for JoJo Trader, right? In general, and this is a cornerback, recruiter, wide receiver, and JoJo speaks the world of DVD. That's one of the main reasons why Miami was always in the lead with JoJo Trader for a very long time. So I'm just trying to say, like, you need both. I think for coordinators, I'd rather have an X's and O's guy, because I'd rather you concentrate on your scheme, versus going out on the road, all the time. So I'd rather you be a great developer of your scheme and put your players in best positions to win versus being, the best door knocker in the country. But I think for position coaches, especially when you're trying to climb that ladder and eventually become a coordinator, I think being both, understanding the player, by going to the home and talking to the parent, building a relationship, but also like yelling at them at practice, controlling their playtime as well. I think those two go hand in hand. As far as I'm concerned, just because of the fact I've heard what players have said. I've heard what like it's always all my relationship with my recruiter was such and such. But Mario is the closer. Once he puts those loafers on, he's going to close you. That's the whole idea. So he is the lead recruiter and he is the closing recruiter. He also still has a relationship with the parents, right, as well. So that's my thing. But I think for coordinators, if I was to go back to Lion Kane's question, for coordinators, I do think that I'd rather have an X's and O's guy that could put the talent in his best position to win versus a guy who's a good door knocker. Because Nat Skidgy was a good recruiter. Don't get me wrong. And I don't want to knock the guy. He had one good year where his defense was very good, But Lance Skidgy was a very good recruiter. But I would have rather, had the same defense he had his first season and a carry over into the second season. That being said.
Yeah. No, yeah, man, 100%, man. I think you all great points, man. I think you hit it on the head by and large, man. I think, again, if you ideally, right, you want both, right? I think that's a very, very easy answer, right? And definitely not a cop out by any stretch. I think everybody wants that, right? You want to have great recruiters that are great developers, and that's always going to be the case. But if you make me choose one, when you're talking, when you're talking cornerbacks, I think you want a guy who's a developer. I think
True.
corner. I think corner is one of those positions that I think it's a development position, right? I think
Yeah.
you have guys who, the cornerbacks are elite cornerbacks coming out of high school, few and far between, because I feel like your really good corners, I think at times are just kind of playing out of position, right? I think you got guys who are like, they play corner in high school because they can, right? You have guys who are like, oh, receiver, they'll play corner, right? They're like a safety, they'll play corner, right? They're just more talented. It's not because they were a great corner, they're just more talented. They're faster, they're better, and they just happen to play corner. And so I think your corners coming out of high school, your real, true, boundary shutdown corners, I think are very few and very far between. I think it's a position that's developed. And so I think for me, I think at that specific position, I think a developer is what I prefer, because again, you got Mario, you've got Heatherman, right? You've got guys that can recruit it. I think as long as you put somebody there who's developing guys, I think you're going to be fine, right? And so, that's where I'm at with that particular, choice. In terms of how much stock do you put in the notion that Mario is the many expectation from his staff is a reason for the slow process of hiring coaches? I mean, that's nothing new, Lion King. I mean, we've known that, from the time he got here. We've known that some of these hires have gone, well into the spring, right? And I don't remember the timetable for all of them, but you've got people coming in a couple of days before spring practice starts and everything. I think he's a guy who takes his time. I think he's a guy who goes through the process, right? The other day, Eli Drinkwitz, who's a coach at Cincinnati, I don't know if you heard that interview. He was talking about the hardest interview he's ever been through was the one with Mario Cristobal. He got hired at FIU, but it was only after turning down the job the first time because he didn't think he could work for a guy like Mario, right? And so that's always been his MO. He's always been a guy who who's been thorough, who's taken his time with those hires. And so this is nothing new, right? The norm has been this. The norm has never been a quick hire or a quick decision. And so there's no reason to believe that this was going to be any different, right? And so I think in terms of the notion that Mario's demanding expectations from his staff, listen, man, the reports are out there, right? Mario's an absolute maniac. He's the first one in the building. He's the last one to leave. He lives off caffeine. The guy doesn't sleep, right? And I think you're looking at, what he looks for in his staff members. And I think you have to be kind of similar, right? I think you're looking across the board. He's got guys that, that are by and large, they're a young staff, right? If you're looking on the offense, Mirabal is the oldest guy on the, on the staff. And Mirabal, he's a guy who, he's a junkie too. He's out there recruiting. You see him all the time recruiting and taking pictures with recruits and everything. But Beard is a guy who's energetic, who likes to get out there and recruit. Matt Merritt, by all accounts, was the same thing, right? You look on defense, Corey Heatherman is a younger guy. Jason Taylor's a guy who's all over the place recruiting. Damian Lewis seems to have that same energy and stuff. Will Harris is a guy who's a tireless recruiter. And so, again, man, I think he's got a type in terms of, personality and that drive and that hunger to get out there and recruit. And I think he's not going to stop, and he's not going to rest until, he gets a guy who he feels fits that staff seamlessly. And so again, I fully expect this thing to go till right before spring practice starts.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, especially if he has to fill 3 positions. So
yeah,
it's gonna be a while.
Mario now top 10 or top 5 coach. Well, I don't know if you saw Lion Kane. The 2 people that put out lists just recently, I haven't seen them. I just heard about it on a pod the other day. I think it was JD PicKell and was it Josh Pate, Joel Klatt, somebody. And the 2 that I guess were publishers recently both had Mario at 9, maybe. I haven't looked at them. And actually, funny enough, next week's series finale in terms of what we're doing, which will be part 4 of State of the Canes, will be about the coaching staff. And we were going to touch on that. But just briefly, I know that list got put out. I haven't looked at it, honestly, on purpose. I haven't really searched it out to look at it because I just wanted to save it for next week. But I know both lists from people that put them out. Again, one was J.D. PicKell and the other one was either Josh Pate or Joel Klatt, somebody. They were mentioning that they had, I think Mario was at like 8.
Definitely top 10, but not top 5.
He was top 10. He wasn't top 5. 8 or 9. 8 or 9, something like that. And so I haven't seen because I think I am somebody who, when these lists get put out, I hate going over them without having parameters, right? It's like, what are we judging on, right? Because the list can go so many different ways. Like, what are we going career achievements? Are we looking at, this year, the last 2, last 3, last 5? I don't know. I got to look at parameters and what criteria we're using to base the conversation on. One of them that I heard that I think was JD PicKell's was last 3 years. And he's got Mario on 9. I think that's what it was. And so, again, I saw another list recently where they had, I think it was JD PicKell was the same thing, who he had like his top programs over the next 3 years. And I think he had Miami at like 3 or 4. And so, again, the lists are cool, talking points because of the time of year. For me, where I would have him, I think he's very safely in the top 10. I think we'll get more into it next week because that's just going to be part of the discussion. But for me personally, very safely in the top 10.
Yeah, I'm with you, Q. I think top 10 as well. Top 10 as well. He the only thing right now is that the national narrative, it's been dwindling a little bit on the other stuff, but the national narrative. Thank you so much, Lycade. But the national narrative.
Appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much for tuning in, man. Glad you enjoyed it, man. Hope you tune in next week and moving forward also, man.
Yeah, he still has the game day thing to kind of shake. And that's the only thing about him. And he's gonna win it. The only thing that's gonna shake is that he's gonna win it.
And listen, right? I mean, I think now moving forward, man, you really have to start to listen. And again, we'll get more into it next week, so we want to touch on it real quick. But and obviously, I like the question and I want to touch on it real quick. But this year was one of those seasons, right, that he exercised a lot of these demons that were kind of pre-existing, before the season started, right? People called into question, can he win the big game, right? That's gone, right? Game management. Show me where the mistakes were. Where there's some stuff that maybe, I think kind of as a team on offense and defense, maybe you would like to see better. And I think where we'll start to, in my opinion, and in my view, where I'll start to maybe rank him a little bit higher is I need to see those penalties decrease. Because I think too often, when you're looking at specifically that SMU game, right, where that penalty, where I think it was a little bit heavy-handed on Marquise Lightfoot.
Yeah.
Things like that, where I think that penalty was directly impacted that loss. I think if they don't call him for that roughing the passer penalty, I think they win that game. But I think across the board, we have to become more disciplined as a team. I think when that happens, right, then and now again, you're consistently seeing marches to the playoff based on the way he's recruiting, based on the way they're developing, based on the runs that if these runs resemble what happened in 25. Listen, where you want to rank them is up to is your choice, and your eyes tell you whatever they tell you. But I don't know how you don't place them top 5 to 7 ish, right? And
I will say this:
I haven't seen those lists, and I don't know who's ahead of them. And again, we'll talk about that next week. But again, to me, if you have another season of hopefully you win the ACC, you make another playoff run, you're recruiting, you're developing, putting guys in the NFL. How do you not have that guy very comfortably in the top 10, 6,
Yeah.
7, 8? I'm cool with that. I'm totally fine with it.
Yeah. As a head coach, I got him in top 10, but I will say as talent evaluator, I think he's top 3. That's the one thing I will say. Like, he has a good eye for talent. That's the one thing I will tell you.
Listen, man, you see the way he recruits, right?
Yeah.
You see the way he recruits. You're seeing the way, again, now that's, again, you're the eye for the portal that he's got, right?
Yeah.
He didn't break the bank on Jacoby Thomas. He didn't break the bank on Keontae Scott, right? David Blake got paid pretty well from everything I've heard. A guy like Mo Toure who was impactful. You're getting these guys who, again, they're hitting more and more on the portal guys, right? They're obviously hitting on your high school recruiting. And that's all part of what makes a good coach, right? Now you're seeing the results on the field. You're seeing them beat teams who, listen, I heard everybody talking a house of shits, pardon my French, about Ohio State. They're generational. They're getting, they got 8 of the top 50 players in the country. What happened? Right? The most accurate quarterback in the history of college football, Julian saying, you got Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, and the O-line is this, and on defense you've got Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese and Caleb Downs and so on and so forth. What happened? You can't win at Kyle Field. There's a million trillion fans, and they've never. What happened? Oh, Trinidad Chambliss is gonna. What happened? So, again, man, there's a lot of narratives.
Indiana's going to kill you.
Indiana's going to kill you.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to keep it inside of double digits. Again, what happened there? Kept Mendoza under 200 yards, didn't throw a touchdown pass, right? Outrushed them, right? More sacks, more tackles for loss. What happened? You lost that game in the special teams.
Yeah.
Missed a field goal, gave up pump block for a touchdown. That's 10 points right there. You lost by 6 points. So I'm not saying they should have won the game. That's up to everybody to decide. Could they have won the game? They could have won that national title. So again, if we continue to see what we're seeing, we continue to see the recruitment, we continue to see the development, we continue to see the long playoff runs, hopefully an ACC title game, a championship mixed in there. Where are the strikes that you're holding against Mario Cristobal moving forward? What are you holding against him? What has he not done? What has he not proven? That's it. So again, there's a lot of coaches that are being lauded in that top 10 from what I heard who haven't won titles, right? And so, again, there's not many active coaches. There's like 4 active coaches that have won a title, 3 or 4, right? So that's we can't make it about titles, because if we're making it about titles, then there's like 3 good coaches. You got Ryan Day, Kirby Smart, and now Curt Cignetti. If we're making it about titles. Right, but it's consistent success, consistent, results, going consistently deep into the playoff, and I think that's on the horizon for Miami. And if that's the case, Mario Cristobal is a top 5 to 7 coach all day long.
I completely agree, man. I completely agree. Again, that next week we'll definitely cover it, though. We'll definitely go see where the coaching staff ranks.
Yeah, man. Next week, just to touch on that real quick, I think we mentioned what did we say? I'd have to look at the. I
think it's Thursday at 8:30 next week.
Thursday, yeah, we're definitely going to go at 8:30, and I think we said, was it Thursday? Is that what we said? The 5th. I'll tell you right now. We said, Thursday. Next week will be Thursday. March. I'm sorry. Hold up. Give me. Look at the wrong one. Actually, Thursday, March 5th. Right. So next Thursday, we'll be on at 8:30, man. We'll be joined by my boy AD, man, Adrian Rainey from the Rainy Day Pod. He had a little family thing going on today, but he'll be joining us for part 4 of the series, man. And then moving forward, man, we'll hopefully the program's giving us lots to talk about. We'll get more into, the combine is here in the NFL. I'm sure we'll probably get with some of the guys from FTSN with Bobby and them and, talk some combine slash draft stuff, which, we're both, huge fans of and everything. So there'll definitely be more content coming from the 2 of us, together and, and on different programs, man. So kind of stay tuned for that, man. Lion Cane definitely, again, man, appreciate the support and the comments, man. You were awesome today.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it, Lion. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, man. Got anything else, brother?
Nothing much, man. I might be doing an episode real soon. I'm like in the midst of like fixing up my son's room, so I haven't been able to be on lately, but I might be doing an episode soon on Rising Stars. I might do a Rising Stars segment. It's gonna be on Jackson Cantwell and Samarian Wingo for them doing good things, before spring practice has kicked off. So I want to do a little segment on them, and I might do one real soon on Nick Lanier, real soon as a possible Kane segment. So that's gonna be fun too. Coming real soon.
Absolutely, man. Nick Lanier, guy who is high on the wish list for the Canes, and the guy who is we'll see, man. A lot of people are projecting him to be part of the 27 class, and if that's the case, man, that'd be a hell of a get. A guy who is at Miami Northwestern.
Yeah.
Right, and so we'll see, man. We'll see. He's down there with was it Neiman Lawrence? Is that the quarterback's name at Northwestern?
Yes, if I'm not. Yes,
Neiman Lawrence, right? A guy who they expect to reclass from 28 to 27. So Miami's high on both of those guys. So yeah, we'll see, man. Hopefully, yeah, man. Those sound like great episodes right there, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Again, Lion Kane. Yeah, brother. Tune in next week, man. Again, 8:30 next Thursday, and we'll again, that'll be part 4. We'll discuss the staff, just kind of in general, break down the coaches on both sides of the ball. And again, after that, we'll get into some more stuff. Definitely won't be the end of our Canes content, together. And I'm sure you're gonna be on, man. You always got some good guests, man. I'll be back on at some point, I'm sure, with Russ from the College Blitz podcast. Obviously, shouts out to him. Tune into his man, Russ on Deck, on YouTube. And yeah, man, if you don't have anything else, man, appreciate everybody tuning in, man. Lion Kane, you were the man today, man. Appreciate the supports, the comments, everybody else that was on here. Who else do I see on here, man? Let me see. David Scott. Appreciate your comments. Ryan Downey. What else we got on here, man? Not like Able like you. Appreciate your support. You said Danny, right, from Vasquez Duo Adventures.
Yeah.
Everybody who tuned in, man. Everybody who commented, appreciate you, man. Like I said, tune in with us next week, next Thursday, 8:30. The I Hate Football podcast, 305 Sports Now. Everybody in FTSN Extra, tune in with those guys, man. Great people putting out great content. And until next time, man, appreciate you guys. Y'all have a good night.